Welcome to Renter Obsessed Live. This is a really exciting episode. We have a special guest for you, and it is the first episode that we are opening up far and wide. So if you're interested in joining us live, asking all the questions to all the really smart people in this room, adding your 2 cents, then you are welcome to join. We'll put the link in the show notes to register and join us. So anyway, I've said join 50 times, so let's move on with our lives. I'd like to introduce Nena B. She is an influencer and she is a TV personality, an interviewer. She's worked with BuzzFeed. I'm so excited for you to be here. I have been really into social media marketing for a long time. I wouldn't say that I'm specifically good at it or have been successful. And I think a lot of us talk in circles like, what works? What does it? And all of us are kind of just trying to figure it out as we go. So the fact that we have the opportunity to talk to you who have built a career out of creating content and leveraging these platforms and building an audience that really is engaged in what you're doing. I mean, there's no better person to ask and learn from than someone that's achieved it in a really big way. So a little background on this topic idea. So our very first episode of Renter Obsessed ever was about influencer marketing multifamily. That was inspired by a conversation that I had at AIM, the conference that is actually coming up really soon again, where I did a discussion with an influencer that I had used. Her and I did a 9-month trade contract, moved her into a brand new building, and she traded content and posting on her own channels for rent. And that partnership yielded 18 leases for our community, gave us all the content in the world that we needed, and really supercharged our entire marketing strategy. And so that was round 1. It was just us, small group of marketers. And this round is really exciting because now we can learn from Nena, who has gone viral twice. Her dad is a GIF. I'll let you talk more about your stuff. But the fact that we now as a group get to kind of rally around part 2 of this and actually ask our questions versus just, make assumptions about the industry. So without further ado, Nena, why don't you introduce yourself to the group?
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I am a content creator. I'm an influencer, on-camera personality, and I do some acting as well too. So like you said, I have gone viral 2 times. That went into my dad becoming a GIF. And I do mostly comedy content, but I also do lifestyle, and I'm trying to do more lifestyle type content as well too. So as far as like videos that I've created, certain celebrities like Cardi B, Snoop Dogg, they reposted my stuff. A lot of big pages have shared my content. So that's kind of how I grew so much in like a short amount of time. So yeah, but I've been doing it for about consistently full time for about 3 years now, but I've had it as a hobby since like 2012. So I've just been creating content ever since college. So yeah.
That's amazing. And in our first conversation, because we talked a couple weeks ago, you were telling me about the fact that you want to move. You're currently in New York, and you're looking at going someplace else. And we had talked a little bit about how you search for apartments and how you've seen apartments advertised and what opportunities you think there might be from a content and social media perspective that our industry just really isn't capitalizing yet. So do you want to talk a little bit about what your search is and what you've been seeing?
Yeah, sure. So sometimes I usually try to go through YouTube because I know a lot of people tend to put their apartments that they're looking at. They have apartment hunting all over YouTube. So I'll go there and maybe look up a certain cities, high-rise apartments. And that's kind of how I find people. And obviously, that what they're saying is very authentic because they're not being paid to do so, to go ahead and look at these apartments. So they're telling you their actual, feelings and opinions about this apartment, and you're getting that feel for it, which makes it feel just so much more authentic when I do watch these videos to know, okay, what kind of apartment is this exactly? So sometimes I'll go through YouTube, even TikTok. I've noticed some realtors now put apartments on TikTok in order to get new renters. So I've searched through TikTok as well too. So there's just been times where I've seen even a friend of mine, I noticed that she moved into a new apartment and she was posting about it and just like posting it to her audience. And I slid into her DMs like, whoa, where's that apartment out? Because the way she took the pictures and did the videos around it. I was like, oh, it's a really nice apartment. And at that time, she wasn't promoting it, but I think because she got so many inquiries, it then turned into a collaboration with the actual apartment complex, because they saw like, oh, wow, this girl is actually bringing, some people who are interested in possibly, leasing an apartment here. So yeah, social media has been like my number one way to try to find new places, new apartments. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's so funny. When I was looking to work with an influencer for the very first time, I had found her on YouTube. I was trying to get one of my videos to rank for a search term, and she was outranking all of my videos with the Southeast Minimalist Apartment Tour. And I was looking through the comments, and everyone's like, oh my God, your apartment's so cute. I want to live there. I'm looking to move to Portland. And I was just like, wow, this is a really untapped marketing channel in our industry. And it has so much, like, because it's untapped, there's just wide open pastures to really capitalize on it. And we also made an apartment hunting in Portland YouTube video, but we only looked at apartments in our portfolio. So when people are watching that, they're like, oh, this is an authentic like apartment hunting video. And she did like have opinions about the three different places we looked at, but they were all ours. So it worked out really well. I have a poll question. Caitlin, do you want to run that first poll?
Yes, I can. Okay. So, okay. It's coming out. Sorry, guys, bear with me again. But there are 4 questions I'm seeing, Sydney. I don't have the option to just post the first. That all right?
That's okay. Let's just go through them all.
All right.
You guys can answer the poll while we keep talking.
Yeah. So I'm going to launch it now. So the first question, what social channels do you focus on for your portfolio?
All right. So go ahead and answer those questions on your own time, and we'll keep moving on to the next question with Nena. So how do you think that can't speak, not a good quality for a podcast host. How do you think property management companies can improve their social media strategy to attract more renters like yourself and your friends?
I think the main thing that they need to do is to understand that in social media right now, video is king. Video. I know when I have gone to like certain apartment complexes, Instagrams, all I see are pictures. And they're usually like stock photos. They're not even pictures that look, very genuine in a sense, right? So even Instagram, because Instagram has been like the only mainly ideal photo sharing app. But even as the CEO, Adam Mosseri, said last year that Instagram is no longer a photo sharing app. They've now pivoted towards video. Now they're pushing reels. If you guys know about reels, they're pushing reels in everyone's faces because they saw the big boom that happened with TikTok and what they were doing with videos. So I think the main thing that property management companies should be doing is incorporating video into their social media strategy. And there's so many different ways that you can do that, whether it's like, like you said, showing your own multiple properties and just showing different apartments in those properties, and maybe trying to get people to engage with that content by like asking questions like, which apartment do you like best? Or can you guess how much this apartment is? That's a great way to kind of get people to just come and comment, because that's one thing that I try to do with a lot of my content is find ways to ask questions to get them to engage. So try to find ways to just make captivating content and just move with the times as to what's trending right now. Use trending songs in the videos. Right now on Instagram Reels, they have trending songs. TikTok, we know, is all about the trends. You have to follow the trends that are going on there. So use those trending songs behind a video that's showing, like a pan, like just panning of the actual apartment, the different, rooms of the apartment. I think that's a great way to kind of just get people more interested in it, knowing that Instagram and all these platforms are just pushing video right now. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something about engagement and how important that is. Very prompting important. People to engage with you, because as we know, at least for the algorithm on Instagram, it's the speed in which they engage as well, and how much engagement comes in.
Exactly.
So when people are going and interacting with your content, respond to every single one of those posts. Yes. And I see influencers do such a good job of engaging back with their following. Yes. And I think that's probably a big reason why it helps, get that content in front of people.
It does. It does.
I love that. And, one of the biggest things I hear all the time from people in the apartment industry is like, well, I'm not going to get leads. I'm not going to get leases from these channels. Like, it's really hard to think about them as a lead gen source. It's like, I can directly attribute this to XYZ, like ROI. And I think it's important. And like what you said, you go to YouTube to find these things, and maybe you don't click on the website. Maybe it's not always super trackable, but understand that people are there. And also,
Mhm.
even if they found your apartment from Zillow or something, they probably then went to your social channels as they're vetting like their short list to see what the
Exactly.
lifestyle is really like and if it's authentic, like what type of authentic content beyond what like the glossy real estate images, right, that you mentioned that
Right.
we have,
Right.
or stock photos even. So yeah, it's an important part of the journey for sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like because we promoted you all to panelists, you don't get to vote in the poll. So too bad. We're learning, growing pains, whatever. So let's just keep the conversation going. I have a couple more questions for Nena, but Renter Obsessed, the cornerstone of Renter Obsessed has always been that it's a conversation. So I'm going to shut up and let anyone in this group who wants to pop in and add their 2 cents on the subject or ask Nena a question.
So thanks for joining us today, Nena. I was wondering how you work with brands to kind of adhere to their brand guidelines and, showcasing their product or service in a way that fits them while also staying true to your personal branding.
So I always try to, figure out a way to make the content as genuine as possible, as authentic as possible, because that's most important to me. I don't want to share something with my audience that doesn't seem like something I would want to, there's influencers that take a bag just to take the bag, because obviously, people want to get paid, but I always try to make sure it's something that aligns with my brand. So it already aligns with my brand. It's usually easy for me to come up with content that makes sense for both parties, So I'll come to them with my ideas and they can approve it first. So that way I don't waste my time creating all this, this content. And then it turns out, oh, we can't actually use this. So let's get it approved first and then work on the content itself. But yeah.
Speaking of that, I think it's also really important for us as marketers, and I've said this before in conversations, that the reason why we're working with influencers is because we want to connect with their audience, and we don't know their audience like they know their audience. And so it can be kind of hard. Like I come from a brand background, like I'm so particular about how I want things to be, and that's just not always the best thing to do. I mean, relinquish control to the creator, because the creator knows their audience, and there's a reason why they have 300,000 followers and I don't, because if I did, I would not be here right now. I would be like jet setting somewhere. So trust in the influencer, like trust in the creator as well. It's very collaborative, which I think is really special. That was my experience with Olivia, who I had worked with in the past, and it was very successful. But speaking of which, what are some metrics that matter to the brands that you work with? And like, what are the KPIs for performance and how do they track their return on investment with you?
So they always ask for the back end insights, right? Because you can only see publicly, you can only see the likes and the comments. But on the back end, you see the reach, you see the impressions, you see the saves, you see the shares. So they want all of that information just to know whether or not this post for them, because they don't actually share with us like, oh, okay, if you got 100,000 views, that means it did. Like they don't tell us what their actual KPIs are. They just want all those insights so they themselves can use for their internal to kind of figure out whether this is an influencer that actually worked and fit with our brand and did well. So that's what they usually go for.
Yeah. And obviously, if you're working with someone who has a big enough following, you have the ability to link back to your website from content that they post. And so if you are working with a creator, providing them with those tracking links is really key. Like, for example, I have my CRM that provided, I can do as many different sources as I wanted. So I could be like, this one's influencer YouTube, this one's influencer IG stories, this one's for feed posts. And I could really break down, not that you need to like hyper analyze what type of content, but it's sometimes nice to see, but also as a whole to see like how your influencer channel strategies are comparing to some of our more traditional marketing strategies like Google ads or something. So it's definitely important on the front end to make sure your tech stack is set up so you can track all of that. Well, cool. Does anyone have any questions for Nena before I move on to the next one? Yeah, it's Brian.
Hey, Nena, thanks again for making the time. I'm curious if you found within the styles of content that you create, you dabbled in comedy, you said, but within the styles available, have you found more success in terms of impressions or reach or engagement within like a subcategory of that? Like, is there a theme that you usually go for when creating content?
Honestly, I can't say that there is a subcategory that does better than the other per se. My content is usually like more so relatable comedy. So if it's something like, living in NYC or something about my dating life, things of that sort, there's different ways that, I generally what I do is I go to TikTok and look for inspiration to see like, okay, what's trending on TikTok right now? Granted, TikTok is kind of like cater towards you and what you've been watching already. So they show you stuff that you're most likely interested in. But that's kind of how I'll come up with the comedy content that I do. So it can range from like a video about living in NYC to a video about just, just about anything, honestly and truly. So I wouldn't say there's a subcategory that particularly does well, better than the other per se. Depends on how you create the video, how you create the content. So yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I was asking because I feel like there's this phrase going around where people are getting stuck in their own algorithm. And so based on the content that you're consuming, you're kind of you're narrowing your own variety based on what you're engaging with. I'm curious what kind of strategy a content creator would have in order to break into other people's algorithms and like maximize their growth, so to speak.
That's actually a really good question. I guess if it were me, if I were trying to tap into just, gaining a different audience, a new audience, I would, so I know like going back to TikTok again too, if I searched for something that I feel like the audience that I'm trying to attract may be into, maybe I'd start liking that content. Like you just, you tap it on TikTok and then it starts to show up that content on your feed. And that from there, I can get inspiration as well too. And once I know, okay, like it seems like the audience I'm trying to attract, they're into videos like this, let me try to create something like this my way, right? Then that's what the issue I see with TikTok is that a lot of people do a lot of copycats. Like, oh, okay, this works for this person. Okay, let me do it too. No, try to find a way to put your own spin on it somehow, some way to just make it your own. So that's what I would do to attract a whole new audience. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say to that end, one of the things that I had started to do as I kind of tried to bridge that gap between professional and like personal personas was one, to create like kind of shadow, I feel like the kids call them like finstas, but it's like my like back Instagrams. I'm like, I say the kids because I know I look 12, but I'm really not. But yeah, like creating something around that. So like I kind of dabble in photography. So I have like a photography page where I follow other photographers and I get inspiration on that. Now that I'm in this training space, I've now created this training persona, even though I have a huge brand that's already following like my curly hair one. So it's like now with that, I try not to duplicate and I only follow people that are centered around that subject. So like with my training now, I have much more like multifamily and those type of things versus like everything being about hair. But the caveat and sometimes how I used to work around that was also by following hashtags versus just following people. And then like you said, Nana, just like going ahead and putting in like liking things and then you'll start seeing them populate. But following hashtags kind of was definitely something that was a game changer for me that I just started doing.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday actually about marketing, and one of the things that they were talking about TikTok specifically, and they said this new generation of marketers coming into different industries, a really interesting mix of skills is traditional marketing and theater and like performance art, because right now, for the most part, a lot of businesses are hiring creators, hiring influencers, but in the future with TikTok, they might be bringing those people in-house to be actually part of the marketing team as well. So I just thought that was interesting. It made me feel good about myself because I grew up doing theater. And actually, I know Brian over here did too. So it's like, oh man, the future of marketing. My theater background is finally coming to play.
Me too. I'm also a theater person.
Yes.
Oh,
Maybe it
wow.
actually is one of those things like, how the Google tells you that people who are interested in this might also be interested in this. Maybe there's some correlation between theater people and marketing, and we're all here for our grown-up jobs because Broadway didn't pan out. Yes, I'll still do community theater on the side, but anyway, so Nana, this conversation started because you told me that you are actually looking to collaborate with an apartment company. You're looking to move to a new state, and you'd like to get in a position where you're creating content for a property management company as a trade. And so I would love to, because I know you said you focused on lifestyle, you focused on comedy, dating stuff. What are some ideas that you as a creator would take to a property management company implement that you think would be really successful?
So something I would do is, I know a trending thing that I did see on YouTube was where people do like, what $1,500 gets you in LA versus New York, right? So maybe something like that I could bring to an Instagram as well. Like do something for YouTube, do something for TikTok, as well as. So yeah, did you guys hear anything? I was talking for so long until I realized that everyone was frozen. I was like, oh my God, no.
So you talked about YouTube, trending YouTube videos where what $1,500 can get you in different cities. And that's actually a really good idea if you're working for a property management company that has a national presence, or like that has properties in a bunch of different cities. Because when I worked with an influencer, she created content for the building that she lived in, but she also created content for my entire portfolio. And so for that 9 months, I didn't pay for a single photo. I didn't pay for a single video. And the replacement costs on that trade, like honestly, if I didn't get a single lease out of that relationship, the amount of money I didn't spend on hiring those services, which you know, and we know, like they're vital now, especially since people aren't out and about, driving around as much, looking at apartments in person. And also people are working remotely so they can live anywhere. So it's kind of like you said, Nana, like I could move to any of these places. I don't know where I want to live yet. And so a video like that, where just maybe you travel to the different states and the different all-in-one property management company, I mean, they could get content for a huge portion of their portfolio with just one person.
Right. That's definitely why I didn't even think about that. That's actually a great way to go about it as well too.
That's why we do these conversations.
Right, you have to. I was gonna also say that there could be a way to add like, a funny twist to it as well too. I did a video where I talked about living in NYC, and in that video I was talking about, oh, I'm chasing my dreams in New York. And in that video, you then see me like go into a box. People always say that living in New York is like you're living in a shoebox. So I literally got in a box in that video, and the video was just so funny. People loved it. So maybe a video where I could compare, if I'm living in Atlanta, what $2,000 gets you in Atlanta versus New York, and it's literally me going into a box. So that could be a funny twist that kind of just gets more engagement and could work that way as well too. And then I would just do definitely, even though Instagram did say that they're no longer a picture sharing app, sell pictures as well too, because it does help to kind of like have people just, see what it kind of feels like to live there. Although you can do that through video too, but sometimes pictures does the job. So I think I would focus more so on the videos as far as YouTube goes and a TikTok, and then balance it out with pictures and videos on Instagram, mostly reels, because reels. And that's another thing I was going to say, as far as like focusing on your social media strategy, is that make sure when you do videos, do them in reels, because the way these platforms work is that when they release a new feature, they boost that feature. So when you use that feature, you're more likely to get your content seen in front of different audiences, because they're trying their hardest to boost this feature in order to get more people to want to use the app. So Reels right now, and it's trending on Instagram. So people should definitely be using that for sure. Use Reels.
Also, if you're afraid that you're going to invest this time and money into creating content on these platforms and you're not necessarily seeing the results that you want, this is content. And it doesn't have to only be consumed natively in that platform. If you have a reel, you can email that reel to a prospect in a follow-up and be like, here's a 1-minute tour of the apartment on super speed. Or you could, use, if you're working with an influencer, when I did, my entire website was all her pictures. I built my website with her content. And when I was working with, I had my apartments.com, my Zillow listing, I used her pictures in my Zillow ads. And so as people are scrolling through, looking at all these properties, they're seeing real estate photo, like, oh my gosh, this warm picture of someone just lounging with their dog and a house plant. It's like totally different look. And if you can stop the scroll, then that's huge.
Right. I totally agree.
I have something to add. So if you guys follow hotels, Kimpton Hotels has they pull like all their guest pictures. I'm sure the majority are actually influencers because they're beautiful pictures. And I feel like my picture would be like the bed crooked. But they have it on their website. So they have a space on the website where it's just like, see what our guests are doing. So, you know, that would be a way for apartment communities to use a similar function, see what our residents are doing. And it could literally just be one resident who's an influencer. They don't need to know that it's one
Right.
resident.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
that's
a
social
really-
proof.
That's a smart way.
Oh, sorry,
You know, that's
go
a
Courtney.
really good point. No, I was going to say back before social media, we used to give away like weekends in our model as like a precursor to like making your final decision. Like, do you want this option, right? So everyone who had toured, like for that month, they'd get an option to like come in and stay in the model. But it was like, wow, what if now, I know some people are offering like discounts and things like that, but I feel like influencers could probably even just say, hey, just let me stay and take photos for the weekend in your model, in your clubhouse, and like have the experience without actually living there. Like
and then
you
you don't
would
have
at
to
an
rent an
Airbnb.
Airbnb.
Right.
Correct.
Right. That's
Exactly. And most of the time they have, you know, Wi-Fi set up and everything, like it's super simple. But as a Kimpton follower, that's what it triggered me because I literally stay in like those hotels just for the photo worthy moments. I think some of my photos are on that page too on IG.
If anyone knows anyone that works at Kimpton, hook a girl up. I want to interview them. What's going on, Brian?
Yeah, I was just trying to add to some more content generation ideas. I'm trying to think of like trying to stay up on top of what's trending, and I think it's not even just unique content, but maybe packaging it up in a way that makes it feel ultra relevant and almost new. And so I know that, you know, apartment websites, we're constantly promoting the amenities we have, right? Like we have a pool, we have a gym, we have a sauna, yada, yada, yada. But if you frame it as like amenities that my apartment complex that has that just makes sense. Like I've seen a bunch of those videos, and as long as they're like unique to the property and they're not something that's not expected, you know, like not just a pool, but a really big one, or not just a spa, but a really nice one, then I think like that's a really fun way to tee up some of the things that apartment communities have to offer, but in a relevant content consumption way of like a reel or a TikTok.
I think that's a great idea. That's awesome because it's trending right now. People are always talking about what makes sense in their apartment. So that's a great way to go about it and do that for sure. And I haven't seen, because I have seen like realtors, they're like on top of, as far as on TikTok goes, I've seen realtors on TikTok on top of the new trend. So I haven't seen something like that. So I think that's a wonderful idea. Definitely do something like that.
That's one of the benefits of like beyond just working with a content creator for their audience and for the content, like collaborating with them. And when we were originally talking and brainstorming about different ways that you, Nana, could work with a property management company, one of them is like what you're doing right now. We're all learning from you. We're learning ways to improve our own social media strategy and to create better content that is actually resonating with our renters. So being in sort of a consultative role as like almost an internal social media strategist, like if you're working with an influencer, depending on what your contract is and you know what makes sense for them, they can be an incredible just like educational resource. Like in one of our episodes of Renter Obsessed, we talked to Sarah from PRG. She's the marketing brand director there. And she has this thing called, one of her marketing people is like Devon's Design School. And she brings in all her on-site teams and she teaches them how to create social media content, like how to post, what to post, and just empowers them to be creators and have the like employee generated content. And if you have someone in your organization that you can go to as a resource to maybe put on a quarterly training with your on-site teams and empower them to be content creators as well. And then you have like this incredible flood of, you know, content that can really supercharge your channels. I mean, you can even bring that as a resident event, like how many, maybe you have residents that are interested in learning more to improve their own personal brand. And you can have, that's kind of a nerdy, but awesome resident event idea. Just learn from an influencer. Yeah. You want to do it? I would go.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Do any of the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kanchan.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to go for what Sydney mentioned. When it comes to creating content, I always use our employees. I think I have a little bit of an advantage because a lot of our buildings are in Studio City, and most of our part-time managers work in production. So I always go to them and I'm like, "Can you guys, help me with this video?" And they're always excited to do it. And what happens ultimately is like when they do these tour videos and things like that, and I post them. And when prospective residents show up, they'll like just stop for a second and look at them. I know you from somewhere, and and they're like, "You probably watched the video on the website or on YouTube," and I think that increases the employee satisfaction too. And the feedback I'm getting is amazing. So definitely videos are working. Nana, I had to agree with you on that.
I was wondering from anybody who's actually with one of our property management companies out there, if you've created any, new amenities or just spaces that are kind of geared towards that social kind of impact and, things on site. I know before I came to Knock, I was with a company that was doing a brand new build in Vegas, and I got to secret shop all of these new communities that are being built in Vegas. And shout out to Elysian. It's a brand that is very hot, but very trendy. And I think I spent a good 10 minutes on their seesaw on the roof. I'm like, who's been on like a teeter totter? Like, I haven't been on one of those since I was a kid, but best believe I was making all the boomerangs in the world. And I was like, does this add value as a renter? Probably not, but is it really cool? And would I take all my friends there? Heck yeah. Yes, I would. It would be awesome. So I'm curious what you guys have going on.
One of our communities in Chicago has a DIY room in the garage. It was just like going to be dead space when they developed. And so they turned it into like 2 DIY workstations that are like, you want to paint your table a different color, you can go down and paint it. You want to, film, if you are an influencer and you want to go down and film your like latest craft project, go for it.
We're looking at a lot of our new construction. I mean, the fact that Instagrammable moments comes up in every conversation, and we're filling what would have been, like you said, dead spaces with like a living wall, or we're trying to come up with something that's new and fun and interesting. Like we're going to have a hidden speakeasy. So you're not going to be able to know it's there, but it's going to be, the door's going to be hidden in a mural. So, we're just constantly trying to think of all of these ideas that, not only create those Instagrammable moments, but, keep our residents wanting to bring their friends in for more, because it's the best way to get your referrals is that word of mouth of the residents who already live there.
Katie, I love that. There's a hotel, I forget what city, there's a hotel where like one hotel room is a speakeasy and you don't know which one it is. And like you go to the desk, it's not numbered. And so that would be like super cool to do in an apartment community.
That's so fun. I also like to see that some of the communities are taking more risks in like design, putting, fresh paint colors back in. If anybody watched that Netflix special on, I don't know what the name of the show is, but it's about the June Motel, like these 2 women who they've opened now 2 motels in Canada, and they're all about like this experience, like coming, like they take these dumps and turn them into something amazing, but they'll have things like everything's pink. And it's like, you would think no one would want to come and stay at a motel that all the walls are like pink and it's like feminine, but they're booked out for like months on end because they've created this experience for people to have.
I do have a question in just kind of working with like an influencer. So I have some team members that are really great at collecting content, but it's just the editing aspect of it that they're, not great at yet. And, honestly, I'm lucky when I get the content. So is that something that you would, help a team with if you did work with an apartment community, is, either helping them learn how to do some of that editing, or if you got the content from them, would you be able to like edit and create some of their videos for them?
Yeah, that's something I could definitely help with, depending on what type of, like if it's easy editing, then for sure that's something I could do, or even just consult them and tell them like, oh, you should do it like this. I know even on TikTok, they will have I keep referencing TikTok all the time, but they even have like little tutorials as to how, because sometimes they'll do these like really cool transitions and all these dope edits, and they'll do like tutorials as to how they did that edit, so you know which app to download and how to do this. It is a bit complicated. Sometimes I do see like other influencers, what they do is sometimes they outsource it to someone on like a Fiverr. So that could be a way too, because I know I kind of wanted to do the same, just to kind of, I can do it. It's just that sometimes it takes a lot of time. Editing takes time. It takes so much time. But yes, it's something that I can do. And I'd definitely be open to like consulting and helping them just kind of figure out, okay, how exactly should you go about editing this video and making it look more, making it more engaging for people to want to actually, you know, interact with it. So, yeah.
You know, it's funny you're talking, you're like, we've been talking about TikTok so much. And I know that it's so interesting because people are consuming video content, and that's what you were talking about earlier. And learning TikTok obviously can be really powerful because it's built right now where people that get on it can have a more organic engagement and views than any other platform. I mean, Facebook and Instagram are definitely prioritizing paid content. And if you don't have like a paid social strategy, it's going to be really hard to build any sort of audience on there unless you're working with a creator who already has one built in. And so all these property management companies are like, oh, I'm not sure about TikTok. I don't know. It's like, I mean, you could get several hundred, several thousand views on your post. Whereas if you post it on Instagram, that might not happen for you, unless of course you're going with Reels. So take deep breaths. Bad podcast hosting.
I was gonna say that's definitely true, because even me as a creator, I think that like I snubbed TikTok for the longest, because you know it's more like a Gen Z app in a sense, right? And I know like TikTok, some agency with TikTok, they reached out to me like years ago to come on to TikTok and start posting videos there, and I was just like, I was like, for what y'all are offering me to offer to people, I was like, no, I'm not going over there. Y'all got me. I'm good. And now I see just like what has happened with TikToks and others influencers, they're making tons of money. So I'm just like, dang, I shot myself in the foot by not adapting to it earlier on. And I think that that's what every brand should be doing as well too. Like adapt to whatever's going on in the times right now. Social media is big, TikTok is big, adapt and move with it, you know?
From like an influencer perspective, would you consider it easier to be an influencer partner with a specific apartment community? For example, I work for RPM Living. We're a national apartment community or apartment management company. Sorry, I'm like, meh. Would it be easier to, like, if I was like, hey, I need someone at this, you know, high-rise downtown Chicago to create content for us, or would it be easier to say like, hey, we're this national brand, we're trying to get our brand out there and we need you to help us across the entire brand. So, you know, maybe you spend a week in Chicago and then you spend a week in Atlanta and then you spend a week, you know, wherever. What, from your perspective, would be like the easier, more desirable thing?
So you're saying, is it more desirable to stay in one property versus going to multiple properties and doing it that way? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So like marketing just one community or marketing the entire brand. And obviously, you know, different brands have different marketing strategies.
Right.
It also depends if it's like a third-party management company. So I'm third-party management. So we get paid to manage these communities versus an owner-operator where they own and manage their own communities. So there could be, you know, different brand strategies. But from an influencer perspective, would you say it's more enticing or desirable to work with just one community or work with a company and figure out a strategy to market their brand more than, so like it's the equivalent of like, okay, I work for Marriott and I want you to brand this one hotel in Miami Beach, or I want you to help me market the entire Marriott brand in general.
Okay, got it. Honestly, I think it would just have to depend on the influencer, you know, because there's influencers who love to travel. They love to go all up and about. And they're never one place, right? So for someone like that, they probably would feel like it's easier for them to market the whole, the whole brand in different places, and maybe for someone who wants to kind of stay in one place, I guess it depends on how often you want the influencer to go to the different properties, because depending on that could then, sway whether the person feels like, because I do think that going to different properties in different states would make for so much more content ideas, right? There's so much you can do there, right? And you're giving ideas to an audience that maybe they're not interested in moving to like in Atlanta, but they're interested in moving to Chicago, and now you've just given them an idea as to where they could go in Chicago. So I do think it's more so dependent on the influencer and just kind of how they do whatever, how they do their influencing. So if it's someone who's open to traveling and moving about, I think they'd definitely be down for that. So it's not more so an easier thing, but just what works for each person more so. We can see you crawling in the back, but okay. Please excuse my friend in the back over there.
It was a dog.
I thought it was a dog too. Nicole, that's a really interesting thing to bring up. And it reminds me of something that we talked about in the last episode of Renter Obsessed. And it was around like, how do you build a audience of raving fans within your brand, within like RPM living? Like I, as a renter, I only live at RPM communities because I like Kimpton, like Courtney was saying, I expect this type of experience from a Kimpton hotel. I expect this type of experience from an RPM property. And if you can leverage your influencer in addition to like a cross sell or a centralized leasing strategy, you can build an audience that kind of churns within your own property management company that is dedicated to you. And then they can always expect a certain experience. And when they're moving from Atlanta to Tennessee to Nashville, they can go to the RPM website, or they can go to the Instagram account, or like check out the video, like what $1,500 can get you in Nashville. And you build like brand loyalists with the type of content that you can create with an influencer. And I think that would kind of change the way we do marketing in this industry. We're so siloed. We have, it's a retail shop, an apartment complex. It is branded its own name. You drive by, you see the balloons, you go in for a tour. In 12 months, you might move out because the place down the street gave you cheaper deal. But what if you used your brand as a corporate brand and still had the personalities of the different properties, and then built this like flywheel method of like retaining your residents within your portfolio, bringing their friends into their portfolio, bringing the influencers audience into the portfolio, and then creating like this army of mini influencers with your residents.
Yeah, I think, not to throw every single company under the bus, but I think that it's harder from an apartment community perspective. I don't know why that is. It's something that I'm actually going to be blogging about soon, so stay tuned for that. But
I'm reading that blog. Good.
Because with hotels, so I worked in hotels for years before coming to the apartment industry. And you have very similar situations with hotels. You have, investors, lenders, owners, people that work on site at the hotel, and then you have customers that are coming in. So you still have all the different parties, but I think for some reason in the apartment industry, it's really hard for us to figure out a way to create a brand. And I think we use the excuse that like, okay, so for third-party management, if you take on management of a Class A building versus a Class C building, you cannot give people the same experience at a Class A and a Class C building. So you almost need to create a family of brands if you're third party, similar to how hotels have, Spring Hill Suites compared to Ritz-Carlton. If you're staying at the Ritz-Carlton, you are not staying at a Spring Hill Suites unless something crazy happens. But if you can afford the Ritz-Carlton, you're probably not going to stay at a Spring Hill Suites. So it will be interesting to see if we can like break out of the thought that from a third party management perspective, you can't have a brand because you're picking up all these different asset class in different cities. From an owner operator side, I think it's easier. So one brand that I think does really well, actually I'll tout two brands, so I'm not picking on just one. Waterton, I think they do a really good job, and Amley. And I think there's certain aspects of what they do that carries across brands that would help people want to be loyal to that brand.
I'm going to jump in here. I've got a little bit to add as well. So I am part of owner operator, and where you were talking about, you have an A property and a C property. Sometimes, we do have that as well, because we've built every property in our portfolio, and some are 20 years old and some are, brand new. But sometimes it's situational. You may have a roommate situation where the two of them can afford that A property together, but if the pairs decides to split up, then individually they may be able to afford that C property, but they know that they're going to stick with your brand because of the service and the resident events and just the quality of living that they've come to learn or love at your A property. They know they're going to get that same thing. It's just going to be a different product at your C property. So I do think it is possible, and it's definitely something we see often at Hills properties. But I mean, I can understand where you're saying and coming from is like, that third party management where it isn't always as easy.
Yeah, absolutely. We're coming up on time. So I'm going to do a speed round of questions with Nena, and then we'll see y'all next week. So first of all, Nena, right now, if you could say to this group and to our industry, what's one thing that we should start doing right now with our social media strategy? What would that be?
Videos, Reels, TikTok, YouTube videos. That's like the main takeaway here.
And for anyone out there who has trepidations or is unsure about working with an influencer, what advice would you give them?
I'd tell them you have to take your time to look through an influencer's profile and look through their content, look through the comments, look through the likes. Because, there are some influencers that fake it, right? They have fake followers, fake likes, fake comments. You gotta have to look and make sure who's authentic, who's being real, who is actually getting real engagement with their followers. Their followers are actually really tuned in to them, their life, or whatever kind of content it is that they're putting out there. So really do the work to make sure you're finding an influencer who is actually engaging, someone who has a bit of a personality, I would say as well too, because if you want them to be on video and talking or whatever the case may be, they would need to know how to do that naturally. So those are the things I would say look for: engagement and personality.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you guys all for being here and going through this roller coaster of a ride with us between the freezing and the escape ducks. I mean, this was a Render Obsessed to remember, but it also was a really special Render Obsessed because it's our very first of our future, which is every single week we're going to get together. We'll bring on special hosts like Nena. We will have conversations about things that matter to us and things that scare us. And the thing that's extra special about this is that it is wide open. So if you have anyone in your life that you think would find this valuable or would like to speak or ask questions, please invite them to join us. And if you could all do me the biggest solid and go to your podcast app and leave a review. It doesn't have to be good. I just wanted to be honest. Tell me what you think. And there's also a survey at the end of this. I really like the structure of bringing on an expert so we can ask them all the questions because I've only got so much in here that I can share, and I learn so much from all of you every week. So if you have anyone in your life or anyone that you look up to or follow on social media or brands that you're like, oh, I'm dying to learn from this person, please let me know who they are so I can harass them until they come on our show. And until then, Nena, it was wonderful having you here. You were always welcome. And to all of the property management companies who may be listening and who are just like obsessed with Nena and want her to create all the content for their portfolio, we will definitely put in our show notes a way to get in touch with her so she can come move to one of your buildings and transform your social media strategy. So thank you all, and I will see you next week. Bye.